Yes, my coffee mug actually does have cats on it, but before you start spouting stories about me, I want to tell you that these are killer cats from outer space. They eat huge guys for breakfast. So it's actually, you know, a real man's mug. Anyway. Today, I want to start out with a quote. It's better to speculate than never. I don't know if it's a good quote, I just made it up on the spot. Anyway, I want to start with a bunch of stories today that are kind of speculative in nature. Actually, most of the stories are kind of speculative in nature. I don't know if they're based in fact or reality or, you know, or misinformation or whatever. It'll be up to you to decide. Remember, the links are at the bottom on all of these things, and you can decide for yourself. But first, I must put on my press hat for the day. All right, let's start with internet news, where Sean Michael Kerner has a lesson for, wait for it, the Windows users out there, or Windows in general, actually. This is from the What Windows Could Learn from Linux and Open Source department. I did a demonstration on a TV show called Call for Help a while back, a couple of years ago or something like that, whenever that was, where I demonstrated that it was actually easier and faster to install software on a Linux system nowadays than it is to do so in Windows. And part of it has to do with the fact that most Linux systems have great package managers like Synaptic, where you can basically call up and say, I'm searching for this type of a package. You get a list of several thousand packages, you click on it, it installs it, goes out and finds all the prerequisites that you need for that particular package, installs them for you. It's actually really, really cool, and it is frightfully easy and gives you access to so much more software, so much easier than you could possibly do in the Windows world. Well, compare that to a story from somebody I know who every day when he sits at his Windows computer, he gets a message that says, there are updates waiting for you. And he clicks the button to update them. It goes through the download procedure, and at the end of it says, I couldn't install your updates. And then the next day he does it over and over and over again. So, because apparently this is a common problem, Sean Michael Kerner says that perhaps what the Windows world should do is adopt a Linux-like package manager. That can take care of all those discrepancies and all those prerequisites for you. So, pay attention. There's a lot you can learn from open source and from Linux, all you Windows people out there. Hey, over at The Economist, it's time to talk netbooks again. Over at The Economist is an article called How to Choose a Netbook Small is Beautiful. And it starts out with a quote from Apple's Steve Jobs, which is, Apple does not know how to make a notebook, a $500 computer that isn't absolute junk. Or that's, you know, roughly the quote. They can't make a cheap notebook. They can't build a netbook, apparently. Which is kind of sad, because, you know, Apple makes kind of cool looking stuff, but they can't build a netbook. Well, anyway, they're basically, what Steve Jobs is suggesting is that these things are junk. They're toys. They're useless. What The Economist article is suggesting is that these are actually great tools, extremely useful tools that fit a very, you know, that fit a purpose. Basically, the portability, a set of core applications that you can use when you're on the run that are always available for you. And, of course, they're very inexpensive. They are worthwhile. Now, they also compare a number of different netbooks, manufacturers and so forth, and tell you what to look for. And of course, one of the things they suggest is you should be buying a Linux netbook. That's right. When you go out there and you buy your netbook, you get one with Linux pre-installed. Why? Because let's face it, it makes more sense. First of all, it will run better, faster, stronger, and it's quite a bit less expensive, actually, than the Windows version. And of course, he suggests if you really must have, you know, some of these high-end Windows applications, you probably shouldn't be shopping for a netbook anyway. Anyway, you can decide that for yourself. Hey, let's go back into looking into the future. That's right, that's that speculation thing. Did you know that USB 3.0 specifications have actually been accepted? We're ready to go. In about another year, you're going to see USB 3.0 devices, which, by the way, are 10 times faster than USB 2.0 devices. USB 2.0 devices can go about 35 megabits per second transfer rate. 3.0, 350 megabits per second transfer rate. Wow! So it's actually pretty cool. There's a great link at the bottom from Intel open source developer Sarah Sharp, who is actually working on drivers, Linux drivers for the USB 3.0 stuff. And she's actually working with a prototype XHCI controller that she has in her possession. And she's got a great little video where she's got one of those little USB thumb drives, and she transfers a whole video file across the system. Now, it's early days, and she's working on the driver, but she's getting already 4 times the speed of a USB 2.0 on the transfer. And, of course, we've got that theoretical 10 times the speed of 2.0. Now, what's really cool about this article, and what I kind of like about it, is when can you expect the Windows systems to have USB 3.0 support when Windows 7 comes out, apparently, whenever that is. But it looks like, thanks to people like Sarah, that Linux will have it available as soon as the USB 3.0 devices hit the market sometime in '09. Over at Beta News, hey, we're still speculating a little bit here. Jacqueline Emi, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right somewhere in there, reports that reporters are starting to get little messages from Palm. Remember Palm, the company that produced those little mobile devices that everybody loved so much? I loved my Palm Pilot. I thought it was like one of the greatest, most wonderful portable devices in the history of the history. Well, anyway, Palm has been sending out messages to journalists to come up to the CES, which is coming up soon. That's the Consumer Electronics Show. And they're promising some exciting Palm new-ness. Speculation abounds that what Palm is going to release is the much anticipated Linux-based Nova operating system for the Palm devices, a way to re-energize and reinvigorate the Palm device line. Over at IT Wire, while we're busy speculating and so forth, Stan Beer has an article which probably wins because of its title, which is Windows, you done steal my Linux netbook away. You done steal. That's actually what it's called. Really, I'm serious. He argues that if you take a look at all those numbers that Linux users get all excited about, namely that 30% of all netbooks out there are coming out with Linux preloaded, he says, don't get too excited, all you Linux buffs out there, because Windows netbooks weren't available until about halfway through the year. So if you actually go back to the beginning of the year when these devices hit the market, and you prorate them at a time when Windows would have been available for it, you know, if possibly and so forth, then it's only about 20%. So, you know, you've only got, you know, but you still only have, you know, a couple of million extra Linux users or whatever the numbers happen to be. There's an awful lot of speculation in his article, and some of it is just plain wrong. Like, for instance, he keeps quoting that thing about netbooks are being returned at a rate of 4 to 1, Linux netbooks at a rate of 4 to 1 over. There's only one company that has actually even reported that number, and that is MSI, with MSI wins. So he is quoting that same number, and of course it's open to speculation whether that number means much of anything, given that MSI is not the big player in the marketplace. Anyway, it's an interesting article, and of course he throws numbers out that, you know, might be worth checking out and looking in both directions. And finally, speaking of speculation, over at ZDNet, there's a guy named Paul Murphy. Now, Paul's article is called Skins versus Believers. In Skins versus Believers, Linux always loses. And here's the theory. By the way, I disagree with a number of things in your article, Paul. I want to point that out. But there's actually a fascinating article from the Journal of Psychological Medicine from 2005, if I remember correctly. Stefan Landawansky. I hope I've got that name properly. I'll have the link in the bottom anyhow. Where they took a look at the Iraq War, among other things. And the idea being that if you're going to spread lies and FUD and so forth, if you're going to put out a story which is highly questionable, but you want the public to believe it, and they will, you got to get out there first and you push your message with as much gusto and as much information as you can. And you know what? Even if later on the story gets retracted and is shown to be false, most people will believe the original version of the story. And of course, part of his article talks about the idea that you find, you know, the Microsoft FUD from the people who try to tell you that, hey, you know, this is a bad policy. Here are the problems with running Linux, blah, blah, blah. But the reason that those stories stick and the reason that they continue is because they were out of the gate first. And of course, there's so much bravado and so much excitement behind the story that, you know, you're never going to believe anything otherwise. Nobody ever bothers taking a look at what shows up in the paper 3 days later when somebody says, you know, we are retracting a story which may not have been 100% entirely accurate. Anyway, I've got the Journal of Psychological Medicine article below, and again, it's from 2005, but it's quite fascinating. Fact, fiction, and misrepresentation. Story of how the mind works. It's fascinating stuff. And of course, if you want, you can go and argue with Paul as well. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm done. I'm going to go back to my killer cats, and of course my coffee therein. That's it. I'm done for today. WFTL Bytes.com. Check out the links to the stories. Make your own opinions. Bye. No, really. Bye.